Yo, what's going on, you guys? It's your boy Ben Mahari here, represent Mahari Nation Sports Podcast. Much love to the entire LDBC and the basketball community. You understand what I'm saying? I want to thank to all the loyal people in the LDBC for helping pushing out this channel, though, man. We're at 619 subscribers, and we're pushing on through, continue to create more videos and more content. You know what I mean? I want to thank all the people for pushing out this channel, though, too. We're making moves out here. And also, don't miss basketball conversations on my channel every Friday night, 9 p.m. Central Time, where we discuss, basketball related topics, news, and historical content for you guys. So make sure to tune in for today. So, why do I have the Seattle Supersonics logo on the upper right-handed corner of my screen here? Well, we're going to get to that right here and now because today on an episode of Undisputed, Shannon Sharpe basically said that the 95-96 Seattle Supersonics were the worst team to ever make the NBA Finals. All right. Because he claims because they were supreme underdogs against the 95-96 Chicago Bulls, that they were basically a terrible team to make it that far. And when I heard about that, I just shook my head. Like, this is why, Shannon, you clearly do not know basketball. And I'm gonna save a video for Shannon Sharpe later on today, so stay tuned for that. Because the thing is, though, bro, like, Shannon Sharpe is making this claim because he wants to try to say that Michael Jordan never faced real competition in his championship years, which is utterly ridiculous. All right. Now, he's not going to say it in the full words, but he's trying to say it in the slick term words to trying to make the claim that LeBron James faced tougher competition than Michael Jordan did, which was absolutely beyond ridiculous. All right. Now, I'm going to give you guys some stats about the 95-96 Seattle Supersonics. All right. This was the team that was fresh off of 2 consecutive years where they lost in the first round of the playoffs. And the 93-94 year, which may have been one of the most talented ones, was the first one-seeded team to ever lose in the first round against an A-seeded team, which was the Denver Nuggets led by the Dikembe Mutombo. All right. Now, that 95-96 Sonics team, they won 64 games, all right, and lost 18. They were basically number one. I should say number 8 in the NBA in offensive efficiency, averaging at least 110 points per game, and they were second in the NBA in defensive rating. All right, Gary Payton had one of the best years of his career, leading the NBA in steals, also winning Defensive Player of the Year while averaging 19.3 points per game. Sean Kemp had the best year of his career. You understand? He played at least 79 games. All right. It averaged 19.6 points per game while grabbing 11.4 rebounds per game. Della Shrimp averaged at least 17.1 points per game, and he basically back then when he was playing for the Mavericks and for the Pacers was one of the best 6 men in the NBA and probably one of the most versatile forwards in the game, forwards at that time. You understand what I'm saying? Then you also got Sam Perkins, a former, basically a good veteran off your bench, averaged at least around 11.8 points per game, and basically was shooting the ball from 3-point range around 35% from three. All right. You also had Hersey Hawkins that averaged at least 15.6 points per game and still was one of the most dangerous shooters, in the NBA. All right. Let's check their bench. You had Vincent Askew, who basically played, great defense and rebound. The defensive leader was Nate McMillan. All right. You also had Irvin Johnson, who basically was their starter, but also could come off the bench though too when Sam Perkins was playing starting minutes. All right. David Wingate was another defensive stuntman. And also Frank Bukowski could provide you some long range shooting and some rebounding. All right. So with all these things here around here, okay, with all these stats basically proving how really good the Seattle Supersonics were, let me get into why this claim that Shannon Sharpe made is utterly ridiculous. Because the Seattle Supersonics of that year, all right, once again, like I said, they were fresh off of 2 straight years when they lost in the first round of the playoffs. All right, this team swept. I mean, swept the defending NBA champion Houston Rockets 4 straight. All right. If that's not a great team, I don't know what is. Plus, they were actually up 3-1 against the Utah Jazz, but then salute to the Rockets. They came back, won the next 2 games to force a Game 7. But then the Sonics were able to win Game 7 in a close game to get to the finals. All right. Let me illustrate one thing here. If the Sonics were playing in different years or playing in a different era like today's basketball, they would be the undisputed favorites because the way that they play trapping defenses, the way that they could press you in the backcourt, where they just made their opposition's lives hell. But they were going up against this great team at the Chicago Bulls that only lost one playoff game up until they went up against the Seattle Supersonics. Okay, and you want to know the big thing about that series was is Gary Payton basically was not assigned to guard Michael Jordan. All right, because here's the reason why. And I actually read this in George Karl's book, and I actually personally talked to Detlef Schrempf when I saw him in the 2015 All Star Weekend. I personally talked about this particular subject. You want to know why George Karl didn't want to put Gary Payton on Michael Jordan? It's because he didn't want Gary Payton to waste so much energy defending against Jordan because he needed him for the offensive end. So they basically assigned him to guard Scottie Pippen, and Detlef Schrempf was a guy that was assigned to guard Michael Jordan. Immediately, it was a disaster because Jordan did whatever he wanted. Because even though that Detlef Schrempf was basically 6'10", he was basically slow foot against Michael. Plus, Michael could take him outside and hit his mid range jumpers and completely toy around with the 6'10" Detlef Schrempf. All right, and Michael Jordan, after he scored at least 44 in Game 3 of that series, Gary Payton had to literally tell George Karl, "I'm guarding Michael Jordan. I'm not. I'm not good. I don't care what you think." And guess what? Gary Payton basically shut down Michael Jordan. All right, Michael Jordan, still was averaging, at least 23 points per game in those last 3 games. But Gary Payton made it so difficult for Jordan to get his points. All right, this is what made me so angry about it because George Karl knew that your best defender should have been guarding the best player in the game, and he did not do that. And basically, George Karl was the guy that lost the series because he didn't play his card right. Plus, he didn't control the rebounding with Dennis Rodman. You understand what I'm saying? So, for Shannon Sharpe to say that is absolutely ridiculous. And don't worry, I'm going to save a video about him because I'm going to cook his ass today. So, yeah, George Karl was the reason why they lost that series because he didn't play the hand that was actually right there for him for the taking. And if they would have done that, it would at least would have been a 7-game series, but it wasn't meant to be. All right. So, and also that team could have won a championship in any other years. All right. But they went up against perhaps the greatest team in NBA history with 3 future Hall of Famers and a Hall of Fame coach on the opposition. Okay. So of course they're going to be underdogs against that great team because that great Chicago Bulls team only lost one playoff game. They swept the Miami Heat in the first round, averaging the 23-point margin in those victories. The New York Knicks series was actually much more closer, and they lost in overtime in Game 3 when Michael Jordan dropped 46. All right? And then in the conference finals against the Magic basically had no match for them, against, you know, Shaquille O'Neal, who was basically entering his prime, what I mean? And Penny Hardaway, who was also entering his prime, unfortunately, a short prime before the knee injuries took over. And then you also had Dennis Scott, who set the record for made threes in the season before that record was broken at least 4 different times. All right. And then also you had Joe Wolf off your bench. All right. You had John Koncak off your bench. You also had Donald Royal off your bench. Brian Shaw and Anthony Bowie off your bench. So this was really a talented team that won 61 regular season games. But against that Bulls team, they were just too much. Now granted, Horace Grant went into that series with a very bad elbow injury in that shooting arm, which turned out to be a dislocated what was it, left or right elbow? I think it was the left elbow. It was basically the left elbow that he re-injured it in Game 1 when he basically trying to go up for a rebound, and then Shaq accidentally ran into that elbow. All right, and he was done for the series, but it would have not mattered because that Bulls team was basically could do whatever they wanted to the Magic, and there was nothing they could have done to stop them. All right, and Michael scored 45 points in the closeout game. All right, and also that Game 2, the Magic were up by 18 points in this after the first half of play, but then the Bulls turned up the defense and pretty much came back and won that close game by at least by 5 points. That game right there was the back-breaking point of that series because then after that, the Magic had no confidence in beating that Bulls team and pretty much derailed them after that. All right. And the Sonics redeemed their pride by winning games 4 and 5 in their home floor. You know what I mean? By showing the overall talent that got led to the 64 regular season victories. So for Shannon Sharpe to make that claim is utterly ridiculous because I could give you two teams that were literally twice as worse than the Sonics of 96. All right. One of them was back in 1981, the 80-81 Houston Rockets. All right. Who finished the regular season 40-42. They were basically ninth in the NBA in offensive efficiency and 16th in total defensive rating. You understand what I'm saying? But that team was led by Moses Malone, all right, rest in peace, who averaged about 27 points per game while grabbing 14 rebounds per game. Calvin Murphy, who averaged 16 points per game. Rudy Tomjanovich, which was his final season in the NBA, averaged at least 11.6 points per game. Robert Reed averaged at least 15.9. You can say round it up to 16 points per game. All right. And pretty much that was it. All right. That was it. And they went on and they beat the Los Angeles Lakers led by Kareem and Magic in a two out of 3 games. They went on to beat the San Antonio Spurs in a tough 7-game series led by George Gervin, which basically held the top record in the NBA that year. And then they went up against the Kansas City Royals, who also in return only finished with 40 regular season victories as well. All right, no disrespect to those two teams, but those two teams, them alone, were the two worst teams to ever make it to a conference finals. And the Rockets made it to an NBA finals and went up to against the Boston Celtics, led by a young and healthy Larry Bird, uh, Robert Parrish, and Kevin McHale. Sorry. I mean, and also Nate Tiny Archibald, too. I cannot forget about him. But yeah, that team was utterly worse. And they actually had the series tied up at 2 games apiece before the Celtics closed it out in 6. All right. That team alone was the worst team to ever make the finals. You want me to keep going? How about the Philadelphia 76ers of 2001? All right. That team led by one man, Allen Iverson. All right. Now, granted, they had Dikembe Mutombo, who was Defensive Player of the Year at that point. All right. And sure, he could give you some offense at times, but he was not known for his offensive game. All right. Then you also had Aaron McKee, who also was the sixth man of the year, but also started off the bench, though, who basically can come off the bench, but also decided to start during the playoffs against the other good guards in the NBA. All right. They went up against Reggie Miller and the Pacers. Then they had the historical series against the Toronto Raptors, which Vince Carter started dropping 50 points on their heads every other night. All right. And then the Milwaukee Bucks against Ray Allen, Sam Cassell, and Glenn Robinson. So that alone, they played in 2 tough 7-game series before they went up against the LA Lakers. And despite the fact that they won the first game in one of the best played games in the NBA Finals, led by Iverson's 48 points in overtime, the Lakers were just pretty much no match for them and pretty much blew them out by at least 16 to 20 points. All right. That team, no disrespect to them, but listen, Iverson averaged at least 31.1 points per game and led the NBA in steals while winning the MVP award. All right. But other than that, they had no other guy that basically averaged at least the same double figures. I mean, Dikembe averaged at least 11.7 points per game, but again, he was not known for offense. He was mostly known for defense. And Aaron McKee averaged at least 11.6 points off the bench, but also had to start too as well. So other than that, Aaron McKee, Dikembe Mutombo, and Allen Iverson were the only guys on that roster that basically averaged double digits in scoring. I mean, come on. If that's not a horrible team that can barely score, I don't know what is. But don't worry. I'm gonna save a video for Shannon Sharpe too, because I'm gonna expose him about a lot of the double standards about what he's been talking about since the last dance documentary has been popped out. But I wanted to come down here, and had to defend the Seattle Supersonics legacy on this video here because what he basically said about that Sonics team was ridiculous. Because again, you put that Sonics team in today's basketball, they would be champions. They probably would have won at least 3 championships in a row because of how talented they were. And the sad part was that they would have been contenders again. Now let me give you a little story about that Sonics team, okay? Because George Karl comes across as a complete douchebag, okay? Because by next year, the Sonics were basically still contenders, but they were not as a hungry team as they were in '96. And on this February game in NBC, okay, Michael Jordan and the Bulls came into Seattle for their regular season matchup against the Sonics, right? And George Karl made some comments about how Michael Jordan just takes jump shots so he doesn't get hurt when he drives to the basket. And when Jordan heard about those comments, he went to work and literally obliterated Gary Payton for 45 points on a variety of shots, including one at the end of the first quarter, which he made a half-court shot at the buzzer. The finish was 17 points in the first quarter of play. And literally, if it wasn't for the Sonics literally denying Jordan the basketball in the final stages of the game, Michael could have had at least 55 points or more. Literally. So for Shannon Sharpe to make that claim about that Sonics team was just absolutely ridiculous and just basically preposterous. All right. And I had to come down here and defend the Sonics on that particular note. Because, like I said, if they were played in any other year other than the 96, they would have easily been NBA champions. But that's what happens when you go up against a legendary team that won 72 games that lasted for nearly a decade and a half before the Golden State Warriors broke the record, but didn't win the title in the process. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section. But don't worry, I'm going to save a video for Shannon Sharpe tonight because I'm going to cook him. I'm going to cook him with a lot of stuff that he's been talking about. You understand the same about the whole Last Stand documentary and how he's been acting so much of a double standard hypocrite. So don't you worry. But let me know what you guys think about the Sonics in the comment section. And how do you remember that Sonic scene in the 95-96 year? I'm going to check y'all later. Peace.